Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Charlene Aaron. U.S. and Arab coalition warplanes have struck ISIS targets in Syria yet again, hitting lucrative oil production sites which fund the terrorists. Human rights activists say the latest air assault killed 14 militants and 5 women and children. Heather Sells has the latest.
Warplanes from the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates have struck again in Syria, this time hitting a dozen ISIS-controlled oil facilities. The mobile refineries generate $2 million a day for the Islamic militants.
The only language understood by killers like this is the language of force.
At the UN on Wednesday, the president vowed to work with a broad coalition to take ISIS down, hoping that Britain will soon join the airstrikes. He emphasized that the U.S. will not send in troops, but will support Iraqis and Syrians fighting to take back their communities.
We will use our military might in a campaign of airstrikes to roll back ISIL. We will train and equip forces fighting against these terrorists on the ground. We will work to cut off their financing and to stop the flow of fighters into and out of the region.
The president presided over a UN Security Council session on Wednesday where world leaders moved quickly against ISIS.
The draft resolution has been adopted unanimously.
A new resolution requires nations to track suspected terrorist fighters, prosecute those who travel for training, and share airline passenger information. U.S. leaders are highlighting an earlier airstrike that they say disrupted an imminent plot to blow up American passenger jets by the al-Qaeda-linked Khorasan terror group.
We had good information, specific information, that they were nearing the end of planning and preparations for an attack on Western targets, either in Europe or the U.S. homeland. That wasn't necessarily all clear, but we knew that they were getting very, very close.
Officials say the group was developing explosives that could not be detected by airport screening machines.
They had a plan in place, people to do it, and explosives to execute it.
Meanwhile, another videotaped beheading by extremists supporting ISIS. The French government has confirmed the death of a French mountaineering guide. The radicals released a video of his death, denouncing France for refusing to stop airstrikes in Iraq. Heather Sells, CBN News.
British Prime Minister David Cameron met with Iran's president at the UN Wednesday. It's believed the two discussed the international coalition to fight ISIS. It is the first meeting between a UK Prime Minister and an Iranian leader since the Islamic Revolution 35 years ago. Some are advocating that the West work with Iran to defeat ISIS, even though Iran is still pursuing its nuclear weapons program and is a threat to Israel. Police in London arrested 9 men suspected of terrorism today. The men aged 22 to 51 were suspected members of banned organizations and encouraged terrorism. Searches are also underway at 18 other London sites and a residence. Scotland Yard has raided homes, businesses, and community centers as part of the probe. Police say the searches are not in response to any immediate threat, but are part of an ongoing investigation into Islamist-related terrorism. Last month, Britain raised their terrorism threat level to severe. President Obama is calling on the international community to help combat the deadly Ebola virus in West Africa.
An outbreak of Ebola overwhelms public health systems in West Africa and threatens to move rapidly across borders.
The outbreak is believed to have sickened more than 6,200 people in the region. Nearly 3,000 deaths have been reported. During a speech at the United Nations, the president promised that the U.S. would lead the effort to stop the spread of the deadly disease. He committed millions of dollars and 3,000 troops to build Ebola treatment centers overseas. He is now urging other countries to commit resources as well. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal says President Obama doesn't care about following the law when it comes to a host of issues, including how Obamacare pays for abortions with taxpayer-funded money. In an exclusive op-ed given to CBN's The Brody File, Jindal says that when it comes to abortion, the administration won't even try to obey the law. Jindal also talks in more detail about the Government Accountability Office's report and provides more evidence why Obamacare must be repealed. And you can read the entire column by visiting The Brody File at cbnnews.com. Well, several potential Republican presidential candidates are showing their support for a controversial abortion bill. CBN News has obtained letters from many of them backing a measure called the fetal pain bill that would ban abortions after 20 weeks. David Brody brings us that story.
It is being called the most important pro-life legislation to come along in quite some time. A federal attempt to ban all abortions after 20 weeks, the halfway point of pregnancy. It's commonly referred to as the fetal pain bill because of the prevailing medical opinion that an unborn baby can feel pain by then. Senator Lindsey Graham is the main sponsor of the bill.
If you're telling parents to sing to the baby because they understand your voice, really, should we be aborting a child at that stage in the pregnancy? I don't want anybody carrying the Republican banner that doesn't get this.
That's why Graham, along with pro-life groups like the Susan B. Anthony List and National Right to Life, are pressuring possible Republican presidential contenders to get behind the bill, even though many Democrats and pundits will consider it toxic. And the response so far?
Great response. All the major candidates, I think, will be with us.
CBN News has obtained those letters of support. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush calls the bill humane and compassionate. Mike Huckabee says the effort is pro-life and pro-woman. And Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal considers it common sense. All told, letters in support came in from Bush, Jindal, Huckabee, along with Florida Senator Marco Rubio, former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, and Texas Senator Ted Cruz. As for other potential Republican candidates, Texas Governor Rick Perry did sign a similar version of this bill in his state, and Wisconsin Congressman and former vice presidential candidate Paul Ryan supported the version in the U.S. House. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker have yet to provide letters. Supporters say a law banning abortions after 20 weeks is long overdue. Currently, the United States is one of only 7 countries that allows elective abortions after 20 weeks. The others? North Korea, Canada, China, the Netherlands, Singapore, and Vietnam. Polling seems to be on their side, too. 55% of Americans think abortion should be banned after 20 weeks, and the number is even higher among women. It's at 60%.
This one has caught fire. This is wildly popular. And it's wildly popular certainly with pro-life people. Of course we want to protect those children. But it's also very popular with Democratic women. It's also popular with young people. It's very popular with women. That's called consensus.
But critics beg to differ, thinking that because Roe v. Wade is the law of the land, this bill won't hold up constitutionally, arguing that the baby isn't viable outside the womb until 22 weeks, not 20.
Roe v. Wade says that the government has a compelling interest to protect the unborn at medical viability. That's 1973. A lot has changed since 1973.
But what about the concern that pushing this will give Democrats more ammunition to peddle their campaign theme that the Republicans are carrying out a war on women? Graham clearly welcomes the challenge.
Bring it on. I want this debate.
He could get it if Republicans take back the Senate in the upcoming midterm elections. Right now, though, the Senate Democratic leadership won't bring the bill up for a vote, even though it's already passed in the House, and versions of it have passed in 13 states across the country. But if Republicans do win the Senate, the debate about what happens to an unborn baby in an abortion could be front and center once again. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Rosh Hashanah celebrations around the world are welcoming the Jewish New Year. On the Jewish calendar, this is the year 5777. Israelis ushered in the year with family meals and introspection. But despite the celebrations, there is still uncertainty after this summer's 50-day war against Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip. Israel is still facing unrest along its borders. Scuffles broke out in Jerusalem's Old City between Israeli police and Palestinians wishing to get to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Israeli police were on high alert due to the Jewish prayers taking place at the Old City. The crisis in Iraq is leading many refugees to put their faith in Jesus Christ. A Christian ministry to the region reports that Christians are worshiping in tent churches in refugee camps. Refugees drawn to the sounds of worship come into the churches to learn why people are singing and stay to hear the message. The ministry reports that entire families are turning to Christ, including more than 120 in recent weeks. Also, more than 200 children who've been given Bibles and coloring materials have accepted Jesus as their Savior. And we have many more stories about faith and culture. Just check out our website at cbnnews.com. And right now you can find these stories. Dr. Ben Carson is considering running for president in 2016. The former neurosurgeon recently told radio host Hugh Hewitt there's a reasonably good chance he'll pursue the GOP nomination. And a high school football coach in Arizona is serving a 2-week suspension because he prayed with his players. Despite some students' support for the coach, school officials say staff can't appear to condone religion. Go to cbnnews.com for all the details. Coming up, a new poll shows fewer people support gay marriage and more call homosexuality a sin. We'll examine the meaning behind the numbers.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
A Pew Research Center poll conducted earlier this month shows a slight drop in support for gay marriage. The survey found that 49% favor gay marriage, a 5-point dip from an earlier poll. The poll also indicates that 50% of Americans now consider homosexuality a sin, up from 45% a year ago. The survey also found that nearly half of U.S. adults think wedding vendor businesses like caterers and florists should not have to serve same-sex couples if they have religious objections. So does this mean U.S. public opinion is turning against gay marriage? Our Heather Sells recently asked Regent University's Gerson Moreno-Riano that question.
So in the newsroom, we've been talking a lot about these numbers because they're interesting. They jump out at you. And yet I think because for years we've seen the numbers, the support for gay marriage go up.
Yep.
So to see a slight drop at this point in time, what's your take on it?
Well, public opinion is a very fickle thing, Heather. It can change very quickly, it can be manipulated very quickly, it can be formed very quickly. So it's difficult to make an assessment or a projection just based on these numbers. It could signal a shift. But the gay marriage numbers have been increasing for 20 years now. So I think the key is to continue to look. If there are continuing shifts and a decline here, then there could be a significant cultural shift occurring. It's just too early to tell. Mm-hmm. The other piece we have to think about is that how the question is being asked and the context in which it is asked is very important. This survey was part of a larger survey on the question of religion in politics and public life. So that could also shape the opinion as individuals are going through the survey and thinking about religion and morality, and then they come to this question. Mm-hmm. It could certainly inform that. So there's a lot of things going on, how the question is being asked, possible cultural issues, a backlash against state Supreme Court decisions. It's just too early to tell, but I think it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I was interested because there were two questions relating to homosexuality. One was, the support for gay marriage has gone down by 5%, and then also people's view of homosexuality as a sin. 5% more, people are saying, yes, we see it as a sin. So I thought, there were two questions there, though, that look like a shift.
It does, but again, it's too early. I think we have to continue to look at it. There's no doubt that it's been in the news much more often. All the Supreme Courts of various states are legalizing and opening, and I think people are beginning to ask a question to themselves. Is this the right thing to do? What are the implications for our family, for our future? I think that question is out there. I think the issue has not been decided. So whether Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative is a very volatile issue. It has not been decided for anyone. And the question is out there. What does it mean to be a family? What is marriage? And therefore, I think that the Supreme Court decisions in states are causing people to think and rethink this issue. I think you have younger voters as well, much more involved and not fully vetted on one side, but still very much of a volatile issue for them. So the question's out there. I think there's one clear shot that says maybe there's a shift. Even on those two questions that you mentioned, maybe there's a shift here. But I think we have to continue to look. If you continue to see this, that's very important then. But if it's just a blip on the radar screen and it goes back to normal, then we know that something else is going on. Mm-hmm. So again, I think it's worth considering. It's certainly a possibility, but I think it's still a little bit too early to tell.
If you were advising either of the political parties right now on the subject of gay marriage, what would you say with all this ambiguity out there among the public?
Well, there are two issues. Politicians oftentimes and political parties care about winning elections. And this question is not about winning an election. This question is about the moral framework of our country. So the real question is, what does it mean to be a family? What is marriage? And what are the implications if we shift a traditional understanding of that, a Judeo-Christian understanding of that? What are the implications for society, for children, for homes? That's the real question. No one really talks about it. The questions people discuss are much more individual rights. I want to do it, so therefore the state should allow me to do it. But what about 10, 15, 20 years? What will the social fabric look like? What will children be like? That's the key question that I don't think anyone's really tackling. That's what I think we should be addressing and putting out there a broader framework for a discussion rather than just one based on immediate desires and rights.
I'm just wondering if political advisors for both parties, though, are thinking, given that the public really doesn't seem settled on the issue, if they're going to even shy away from discussing this openly more because of polls like this.
Well, they may, but I don't think the public's going to let them do that. They may want to shy away from it, and certainly this data gives both sides. I've seen critics on both sides saying it's the way it was worded. Others are saying no, it's a religious backlash. No one really knows. So this could be used in lots of different ways. But I think we need to reframe the discussion. It's more about the future in the social fabric of our culture than it is about immediate needs and wants. And we need to have a longer viewpoint here than just an immediate one.
All right, Dr. Moreno-Riano, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Heather. Thank you.
Up next, 20 billion photos a day are shared worldwide on Instagram, many of them by teenage girls. How social media affects young women after this. Welcome back. Well, they can be some of the most damaging images online, and yet most people never realize it, even though they're right in front of you. Angela Zadopak explains how setting up the image of the perfect, sexy woman can be so harmful to today's teenage girls.
Social sharing has become the easiest and most widely used form of communicating, especially for young people. Through pinning, friending, and tweeting, they can't wait to put their likes and dislikes online. Our digital generation bombards teenage girls with rules and opinions on what they should look like, who they should like, and how to behave. Social media almost adds a pressure that makes them feel that they need to reach this artificial perfection. And with that pressure only rising, it can lead to emotional and psychological damages.
Social media is very prevalent, as we know. It's almost impossible to avoid it. It's impossible to be a teen girl or boy and not and feel normal without participating in some kind of social media. When it becomes problematic, especially for teen girls, is when it's sort of used as an outlet, as a way to form an identity, as a way to understand oneself.
The staggering success of Instagram shows the power of images. People share some 20 billion photos a day worldwide, scoring 1.6 billion likes. Many teens base their self-esteem on their number of likes or followers.
If a girl or a woman is struggling a little bit with her sense of herself, of feeling good enough, of feeling worthwhile, maybe she turns to social media more than the norm. At times she feels good. She gets a lot of likes, she gets a lot of attention. Maybe that gives her a temporary sense of validation. But that validation is temporary. It's often fickle because the next day you could put a photo down and not get any positive feedback or even get negative feedback, and then her self-esteem plummets.
That need for positive feedback forces a lot of teen girls to turn to sexier images, which they see splashed across magazine covers, the television, and on a lot of websites we see today.
Girls who are looking very sexy, very slim, these kinds of ideas are often really the ones that are promoted on some of these sites. And the reality is most girls and women don't look like some of those images. So it kind of gives this false idea of what reality is.
And that pressure for perfection, with you being bombarded every single day with multiple images, and those images are always perfect looking, puts a lot of pressure on the way you feel about your own body.
Many teenage girls agree.
It sets a trend, of what you should like. And
What's new?
I think that as teenage girls, we try to kind of reach that image.
Like stores putting out advertisements and stuff all the time. They're like, oh, look at these people. They look so good. Yeah. You're like, oh, I want to look like that.
Why can't I have that?
It kind of makes you less content with your own self.
Various studies show this problem also hits before the teen years. 40% of all 9 and 10-year-olds have already been on a diet. 70% of 6 to 12-year-olds want to be thinner. And a majority of girls from the 5th to the 12th grade say modern magazines influence their idea of a perfect body. While looks and peer pressure are nothing new, social media adds a new twist: cyberbullying.
Cyberbullying for girls is extremely prevalent. I think particularly because there's a way in which you can be aggressive. You can be hard on another girl, you can be mean to her, you can call her names, you can say she's not attractive, but yet you're not really on display.
We have a huge problem with cyberbullying and these awful comments. And then the pressure, again, of girls thinking that they have to look sexy all the time. And, you know, the whole thing of sexting and putting out pictures so that boys will be interested in them.
Social media will only continue to grow, so parents must help children navigate this world of mixed messages.
Just want my children to know, I want to teach them that what they do matters, what they say matters, the images they post matter, and that stuff like that will last for a long time.
Give the young people some ideas of what would be appropriate to post, not these sexualized pictures of young girls where they're trying to pose and look real, you know, Vogue-like.
Experts say to also urge your daughters to focus on personality and character, not outward appearance. And remember, it's the beauty that's inside that will matter most in the long run. Angela Zatopek, CBN News, New York.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Finally today, Operation Blessing is helping fight child sexual abuse in Peru. Child abuse is extremely underreported in Peru. Through a program called PARE, which means stop, school children are being taught about abuse using dramas, puppets, coloring books, and songs. They talk about the difference between good and bad touches and between good and bad secrets. The program is also helping parents and teachers learn how to recognize warning signs, report cases of abuse, and obtain the assistance that these children so desperately need. Good for them. Well, that's it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day, and God bless.